It's Thursday, it's Mio on MMA Time, and we're doing the UFC Fight Night. You would think I would know the main event for this one. Max Holloway, Arnold Allen. There we go. Max Holloway, Arnold Allen from Kansas City, Missouri. I was more looking for where it was from because, I always forget is it in Vegas or are we away from Vegas? And we're away from Vegas, which probably wouldn't make sense because this card has very, very few debuting fighters on it, actually. And a remarkably few. The only debuting fighter on the card, if I am not mistaken, is Bruno Brazil. Oh, and Gaston Bolaños. So, two and reasonably pedigreed ones. Brazil had an impressive showing on Dana White Contender Series. Bolaños is a veteran of the Bellator scene. Both are horribly flawed fighters, but hey, they're here, they're fun, they're action fighters, and we'll get to their fights later. I do have to mention one thing. Number one, this is being filmed much later in the day than usual. I had surgery yesterday on my calf muscle to repair 2 tears. Nothing serious, everything's good, everything's fine, full recovery, yada, yada, yada. But I am still a little bit sleepy because of the being put under. So I slept really late today. That's why the show is being recorded late. And if I seem drowsy at any point or whatever, that is probably the cause. Anyways, let's get into the card here. Although, you know what? I'll give PFL its love. I'm not going to do a full breakdown of the PFL 3 card that is also happening tomorrow, I believe. Friday, right? Yeah, Friday at 7 p.m. So in about 28 hours time. It's an okay card. There are some reasonably interesting fights. If you got the time and you want to take a look at Bellator, or not Bellator, PFL, you can check out Stevie Ray, Natan Schulte. That'll be fine, I think. You can check out Rosh Manfio versus Alex Martinez. That's a fun fight. Basically, the entire lightweight division. Fairly fun, fairly interesting, fairly entertaining. The debut of Shane Burgos in PFL is on the card. Although, I will say, fighting Olivier Aubin-Mercier might be the highest profile fight they could have given him. But I actually think is bad matchmaking, ironically. And I'm under the impression that PFL more or less does a random match making. So I can't blame that on them, I guess. But I probably would have looked elsewhere if I could have had the choice. And I'm always still fairly interested in development of welterweight Delano Taylor. He did let me down at the finals of Bellator. Keep saying Bellator. PFL there last season, where he lost in the finals to Sadabusi. I thought that was a very, very winnable fight for him. And that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. But he is still 26 years old. He can still get better. He still has all the physical ability you could want in a fighter. I think he's a real legitimate prospect. I don't really have any thoughts on I do have thoughts, but they're conflicting thoughts on the whole Chris Curtis appealing the result of his fight with Kelvin Gastelum because of the headbutt. On one hand, I like it because I do think that things like these should be turned into no contests. They should be looked at. They should be explained, whether it's a judging call or a refereeing call. That level of accountability for those jobs should be there, and the fighter should be able to pursue it. So on that hand, I like it. On the other hand, you look at Twitter's reaction to Curtis basically entirely after the loss. And there's a lot of people calling him a sore loser and so on. And I do not think, even if he's successful with this claim, even if he gets a call to a no contest, that anyone is really going to treat it as anything but a loss. So, on one hand, yes, this sort of thing should happen. On the other, I don't think this actually does anything for him. I don't think it helps, find justice even, because I think the UFC will just treat it like a win. They want to get Kelvin Gastelum back on the right track. He's a tough winner. They do like to enforce the tough system as something that still produces talent. And I don't know. It's just kind of a big bag of nothing, I guess. On to the card. Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. This is the first of many fights on this card that has fighters that are kind of hanging on. Now, Holloway to a much stronger degree, but let's talk about the dynamic. Littered throughout this card, you have a bunch of guys who either have had a couple of bad performances lately or have always been guys I have had the feeling were going to fall off incredibly suddenly. Holloway fitting more that latter category. But you have Edson Barboza. You have Pedro Munoz. You have Clay Guida. You have Bryden Royval to a certain degree. You have Zach Cummings and Ed Herman, who are just super, super old. You have Lando Venata. You have Gaston Bolaños. You have Aaron Phillips. These are all people that are like, either because of the time away from the cage and the injuries and that make you wonder where they are now. That would be like a Phillips or a Cummins, for example, who have, and to a degree, Lando Venata, who have been away for a while, or guys who always based their fighting style on a very slim margin of physicality that was always going to fail at some point, and they're now in their mid to late 30s, and that day may have come. Or there's just Ed Herman, who's just 42 years old, and how he had, I mean, he's had a fall off, but how he hasn't become irrelevant is greatly questionable. Holloway is that guy in the sense that I do think that there's going to be a sudden fall for him at some point. Because the guy does rely a little bit on his chin. He does rely heavily on pace. He does rely heavily on volume. And these are things that will suddenly fade and with a little bit of a downgrade could have disastrous impacts. So that is on the table. But I think he beats Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen is a fighter I really, really do like. But I think his hype train is kind of inflated. You know, he beat Calvin Kattar because Calvin Kattar essentially injured himself. He beat Dan Hooker because Dan Hooker is a guy who should never have been trying to go to featherweight, honestly, to begin with. And particularly should not have been at the time. And hasn't looked astounding since. Like, he's still looked okay, but he's not looked astounding. And he's not the win that his name value indicates that he is. And he's a guy who is, you know, going to be shorter, 3 inches specifically shorter. Somehow does have an inch of reach, but I don't buy that. So I think Holloway can play the range game with him. And as much as Allen is a smart fighter and a fighter who goes up in pace and whatever, he's a guy who had a nip-tuck striking affair with Sadiq Youssef, where he couldn't... There were points where Youssef out-volumed him and had things going his way. And then you put him in there with Max Holloway, the king of volume, the king of active striking, well, not the king, but the number 2 guy at featherweight. Like, there's Volkanovski, there's Holloway, and then there's just no one that I really think is going to beat him. I mean, Yair Rodriguez is literally getting a title shot, and he, you know, lost to Holloway. And I think a lot of people like, you know, had that as a negative moment for Holloway. I think, honestly, Yair has proven that he's just really, really good. And that Holloway is still that step above this up-and-coming crop of Ilia Toporia's, Arnold Allen's, Yair Rodriguez's. I guess Josh Emmett is in this group, but I wouldn't even really say that just because of the age. But that new group of guys who are in their 20s or maybe their early 30s, they're chomping at the bit to get in there. And Holloway is still a bridge too far. I kind of need to see him lose before I pick it. And that's why I'm going with Holloway to probably win a late TKO here. I know that Calvin Kattar made it to the distance with him with a style that, if we're being honest, Arnold Allen can replicate a fair bit of. But Kattar is also stupidly tough. And I'm not actually convinced that Arnold is that level of stupid tough. Max is the favorite, -170 to -196. Allen is +150 to +160. There's room for that. I'm picking a lot of dogs on this card, by the way. Like, a lot of dogs. But not in this one. Co-main event, Edson Barboza, Billy Quarantillo, and my lord is Barboza. Very much that guy who is just barely hanging on. His move to featherweight is not actually been a great idea. I mean, this is a guy who came in and like arguably lost to Dan Ige. I thought he won, but arguably lost to Dan Ige. He's just not, he doesn't have the same speed advantage he had. He doesn't have the same pace advantage he had. People are better at just pressuring him and making fights ugly at featherweight than they are at lightweight in a somewhat technical fashion. Technical ugly, if you will. And Billy Quarantillo is that guy. You would never confuse Billy Quarantillo for like more athletic than Edson Barboza, or faster than Edson Barboza, or more powerful than Edson Barboza, or even more technical. But Billy Q will exploit all of the historical problems Barboza does have. He doesn't respond great to pressure. He doesn't respond great to pace. He doesn't respond great to just aggression, and when he hits you, you don't go away. He's very much has, throughout his career, been the definition of a guy who wants to just make the bad man go away and is definitively uncomfortable when you don't, and Billy Q does not go away. He is super tough, super aggressive, super high volume. He will adjust. He will find counters. He will do things and bring chaos and destroy. And I mean, Edson Barboza is a guy who went to decision with Makwan Amirkhani at 145. That's a problem. I've got Quarantillo by decision. I just don't trust Barboza to finish him. And I don't trust Barboza to win fights by decision at this weight class. I think it's happened before. Let me review real quickly here. Yeah, he won a decision. Like I said, he won a decision against Makwan Amirkhani. And he did have a, like, and I do think he beat Dan Ige. But, you know, the Ige fight had ugly moments for him. Giga Chikadze ended up finishing him in the third round. And, of course, Bryce Mitchell ran him over. Quarantillo is not as good as any of those guys, so it's not going to shock me if this is the moment where Barboza gets some things to click. But this is a stylistic matchup he has historically just not done very well against. And I've got Quarantillo by decision, like I said. And the betting favorite is Quarantillo, minus 171 to minus 192. I'm a little surprised by that. I was kind of hoping I could make a big bet on Quarantillo at plus odds and win some good money, but I can't. But Barboza, a live dog at plus 145 to plus 155. So there's some fun betting either way. Dustin Jacoby versus Azamat Mirzakhanov. Interestingly enough, of course, this is one of those tail of the tape fights where, like, Jacoby, 5 inches taller, 7 inches longer. He's a skilled kickboxer. He has a good jab. He manages range pretty well. He's not flustered by pressure terribly easily. He's got good defensive fundamentals. He's hard to take down, hard to out-grapple. Doesn't really offer much of a threat in either regard, offensively speaking, but he will make it hard for you to try to implement that game on him. I really like Mirzakhanov. Like, he's my spirit animal. He's a 5'10", 205er. Like, I can relate. Super dynamic guy, Sambo background. I do believe he might just be a wrestler, but I'm pretty sure it's Sambo. Has some sneaky, good dynamic punching, good takedowns. But he mostly has taken down guys who don't really avoid, There was a discussion I was having with someone on Twitter. And their question was like, who does Bo Nickel beat? And the options were Costa, Adesanya, Whitaker, Vettori. No, I don't think Adesanya was in there. Vettori and Chimaev. And I said Chimaev was the best bet because Chimaev doesn't deny wrestling exchanges. That's kind of would define like everyone that Mirzakhanov has beaten. They're not guys who are going to deny what he wants to do to them, essentially. Like his UFC run, for example, is beating Devin Clark, who wants to out-grapple you, Tafon Nchukwu, who wants to get the best of his work done in the clinch, and, guys like Fakhretdinov and Matthias Scheffel beforehand, Guido Innocente. These are all guys who feel comfortable in the clinch and don't deny it to him. Now, here's the thing. Could he go out? Could this be his moment to show that, you know what? I haven't shown you. Oh, he also has a win over Andre Muniz. But, again, classic example. Guy who is really willing to clinch. Is he going to go out there and maybe show us, like, this level of his game that we didn't have before? This cage cutting craft, this ability to dissect range and bring things in close and make it his fight? Maybe. But Jacoby represents a way, way higher version of that fight than he has ever had. And that's why I'm going with Jacoby by decision. Jacoby minus 150 to minus 175. Mirzakhanov plus 125 to plus 140. I do feel bad that, like I said, I'm going with underdogs, and I've picked 3 straight favorites. Ion Cutelaba versus Tanner Boser. Here we go. We're finally going with the underdog. I do have to say this. I don't think going to 205 for Boser is actually a solution to any of his problems. His problems at heavyweight came down to the fact that he's just not a particularly big hitter in terms of raw power. He's a guy who has to win by attrition or by sneaky good counters. And he's a guy who has really good range-keeping craft, but not necessarily great foot speed. And that means that he ends up in the clinch a lot and you know, getting worked over. The problem is that 205ers are generally going to be faster. Like, the main thing that did allow him to get things done at heavyweight was the sneaky counter game, the sneaky hand speed, the good cage craft. That's going to go a lot shorter at 205, which is a weight class even more defined by physicality. If you want an example of what I mean here, Justin Ledet is a guy who had a very similar game to Tanner Boser at heavyweight, went down to 205 after having been a fairly successful heavyweight, and it never worked. It never clicked. But I am going to pick him to TKO Ion Cutelaba, because Cutelaba's lost 3 in a row. He's looking like a man who is getting more and more desperate to end fights very early and pour even more of his Hulk smash energy into things. And one would think Boser can survive 2 to 3 minutes of that. One would think that's not going to be enough to get it done. And Cutelaba will just fade out of the fight. And doesn't have a great chin. That's the other thing. Cutelaba does not have super great durability. I really wanted Cutelaba to be something. The Hulk smash gimmick is actually kind of fun, kind of unique. He's from a country that doesn't have a long history of producing high-level MMA fighters. I wanted him to come do some things and get some things done. I will say something here, and I do not know if this is true. Tapology has Cutelaba based out of Extreme Couture now, I think. Is that? Yeah. That is the fight. Extreme Couture, previously MMA Factory and whatever. I have no record of him being in Extreme Couture prior to this. So, oh my lord. If Extreme Couture can mold this guy into something, Cutelaba's going to run over Boser, probably. But I do have Boser, the plus 105 to plus 114 underdog. Cutelaba, the minus 125 to minus 136 favorite. I'm not going to say that those odds are wrong, honestly, because Boser has never had a high-profile moment. Cutelaba has. Cutelaba has largely lost to very, very good fighters. I mean, I did talk about him being on a 3-fight skid, but let's be honest, that 3-fight skid is against Kennedy Nzechukwu, who's turning into something pretty cool, Johnny Walker, who is a bit weird, and Ryan Spahn. And he did beat Devin Clark. And he did have a split draw with Dustin Jacoby back in 2021. But I don't know. I just have no faith in where he is right now. But if he is indeed at Extreme Couture, and it does list him there, this could get interesting. This could get very, very interesting. Honestly, I still think that 185 would be an amazing home for him, though. Pedro Munoz versus Chris Gutierrez. Gutierrez, the taller fighter, the longer fighter, 3 and 2 inches respectively. But Munoz is always used to that. They dropped the ball on Chris Gutierrez, man. You fed him Frankie Edgar in Edgar's last fight. And he beat him, and he looked impressive. And your reward for that is a fight night main card spot, admittedly, but against Pedro Munoz. The guy who the fandom has so little buy-in on that they thought he was faking it against Sean O'Malley when that fight got ended by eye injury. And I know people will point out, like, whatever, the dubious nature of the eye poke, whatever. I still say that, like, the fact that anyone thinks Pedro Munoz, tough as nails, Pedro Munoz is a guy who's going to, give up on a fight to try to get a cheap win is ridiculous. But it does reflect where the fandom is at this point on Munoz. I mean, I guess the anti-Sean O'Malley crowd is pretty big on him right now. I guess you capitalize on that, but this just feels like a waste of Gutierrez's hype. It's a fight that Gutierrez is probably going to win. He does play the range game pretty well. He plays the counter game pretty well. He low kicks exceptionally well. So does Munoz. We gonna see some low kicks in this fight. There has been a bit of a weird finishing streak that Gutierrez has been on. I do think it ends here because I do think Munoz is still very, very tough. But Munoz's ideas and best work is people who just can't stay away from him or that want to make wrestling part of their game. And Gutierrez is just quite happy to sit outside and work his game. And I predict that he will do that to a decision here. Gutierrez minus 200 to minus 230 favorite. Munoz is plus 160 to plus 180. Is this still... Am I still on the main card with this fight? I am. Oh, God. Okay, so I got to rant about this now. On the lower end of this card, you have a fight between Brandon Royval and Matthias Nicolau, which, based on Tapology's logic, is not even the featured prelim. Am I wrong on that? Hang on. UFC.com. Please tell me I am wrong. That Tapology is wrong in listing this card as it is. Schedule, please. Please tell me this is at least the fight I'm talking about, Royval versus Nicolau, is the featured prelim. You are not going to give me a card. Wow, come on. Come on. My apologies here, people. Fight Passes let me down on this one. I don't want Fight Pass. I just want regular UFC, please. Please. There we are. Royval and Nicolau are not even the featured prelim. Oh my God. That is a top-ranked flyweight fight, and it's an exciting one. And you have put it below this fight. Okay. Clay Guida, Rafa Garcia. It's 2023, and I'm thinking about picking Guida. I didn't think we would get to this point, man. I thought he would fall off so long ago. I thought this is a guy who has eaten a ton of crap over his career. He has bad defense in like every sense of the word, other than like he is actually really, really mobile. So I mean, I guess not static is the one thing you could say about his defense, but he has been hit hard so many times that he's still here taking punches, not getting knocked out easily, still getting choked out quite easily, which has always been something he does, but getting the job done somehow. This is the ultimate, how is this guy still hanging on story? And this might be the fight where that ends. And I'd be happy for Rafa Garcia if it were the case. But I don't see anything Rafa Garcia does to win this fight. Because he doesn't have a great range-keeping game. He doesn't have the smoothest, most technically cut-out striking game. He doesn't have the greatest anti-wrestling game. And if you let Clay Guida wrestle with you, you'll probably get tired and get beat. And I like Rafa Garcia. I'd like to see him do good. He's got a high-end action fighter written all over him. But that's kind of the guys that Guida is still eating somehow at this point. And at the age of, how old is Clay Guida at this point? Clay Guida is 41 years old at lightweight. Oh, my Lord. And, yes, the fight with Scott Holtzman was not great. Yes, he got knee barred by Claudio Puelles, but Puelles does actually have reasonably good, random catching ability. And then you've got Mark Madsen and Bobby Green. But, he did still beat Michael Johnson. He still beat Leonardo Santos. I don't know, man. He beat Billy Quarantillo in a grappling match back at Fury Grappling. How do you lose to Chase Hooper and beat Billy Quarantillo? That is... I That's just bizarre to me. But yeah, that's all. That's all I got really. Is that Guida probably will win this fight. It probably won't be terrible, but like it does say something about the division, I guess. He's still hanging around. The feature prelim is TJ Brown versus Bill Algeo. Taking Algeo in this fight. He does everything Brown does, but like a little bit better. Like they're both guys who are not super athletic. They get by doing a little bit of everything, not having a particularly defined A game or a particularly elite skill set in any one regard, but getting the job done. Algeo will scramble, will adapt, is just by being a, by all accounts, kind of dumb person. Very dumb, is a very smart fighter, very adaptable fighter for the most part. And he's gotten some wins over some people that you would think should steamroll him. Like, I mean, the fact that Algeo is still in the UFC with a pretty good record is bizarre. I mean, this is a guy that in his UFC debut lost to Ricardo. He's the guy that lost to Brodin Logain on Contender Series. Somehow ended up in the UFC anyways. Lost to Ricardo Lamas and then has beaten Spike Carlisle, Joe Anderson Brito, and Herbert Burns. Those are really good fighters. He did lose to Ricardo Ramos and to Andre Fili, but the Fili fight was close. The Ramos fight was not, but Ramos is a beast. And TJ Brown is very much in that category of dudes who I am kind of stunned have gotten by this long. Beating Eric Silva, beating Kai Kamaka III is actually pretty impressive. I like Kai Kamaka. I actually think he's a really good fighter. But Charles Rosa and Eric Silva have all kinds of problems. Lost to Shailin Bernbeke, lost to Danny Chavez, lost to Jordan Griffin. Jordan Griffin, Danny Chavez, these are the guys who are very much like Algeo. Veteran dudes who kind of do a little bit of everything and can be a little bit weird to fight sometimes. So I'm going with Algeo to win a decision because Brown is double tough. And Algeo minus 185 to minus 215. Brown plus 160 to plus 170. You could still bet on Algeo at those odds, to be honest. I actually think this is a safer fight than that. And then we get into the Brandon Royval and Matthias Nicolau fight, which should be higher on the card. On a build level, Royval should offer problems for Nicolau. 3 inches taller, 4.5 longer. Nicolau likes to sit on the counter, likes to be kind of a low output kind of guy who looks for openings. And you would think that with that kind of reach advantage, Royval could take advantage of that. No, that's not Royval's game. Royval is a fighter who will pick up his gas tank and douse himself with it, light himself on fire, and run at you. His striking is insane. His grappling is insane. I don't mean this in a good sense. I mean in a pure chaotic aggression sense of the word. He will force a high output fight on you unless you kill him. He will, or his shoulder pops out of socket. And that's the big problem, is that he's going to leave openings for Nicolau to hit him really, really hard. He's not super durable, like the shoulder for one thing, and then also just his ability to take punishment. And that's why I have Nicolau by TKO. It seems like that's not a hot topic pick because Nicolau is a minus 200 to minus 225 favorite. Royval plus 160 to plus 180. You could still bet on Royval at those odds. He is super weird. He could win any fight because dude is just incredibly chaotic. But I do see him losing this fight. Ed Herman, Zach Cummins, combined age of 80 years old. Oh my lord. Zach Cummins is still around? Question mark. He's been away for 2.5 years. I don't know how to pick him. And to be honest, in their prime, I don't think this is a fight that I would pick him either. Cummins had a great deal of problems fighting at 205 and at 185 during his career with just being kind of overpowered. It was at 170 where he really made his bones. And Ed Herman has had a really successful career at 185 and 205. And it's weird because he has the style of fighter that, ages well. It's not reliant on his physical gifts beyond, because he's always been kind of incredibly slow. It's technique. He's not a good striker. Neither of these guys are good strikers, but they are surprisingly effective strikers moment to moment to moment. They're incredibly composed. They're incredibly veteran. How many fights do these two have combined? 31 fights for Cummings and 39 fights for Herman. So yeah, This is a 80 years on the planet, 70 fights in as professional fighters battle. I've got Herman winning by unanimous decision. Could Cummins knock him out? Sure. He's 42 years old. He could fall off anytime. Cummins is 38 years old. He's been away for 2.5 years. Maybe he's worked on something. Maybe he's got something cool, but like he's also coming back, I want to say 2 weight classes above where he last fought. Not that he's a ridiculously small 205 or anything. Oh no, he did fight at middleweight last. Okay. I'm wrong. His last couple of fights were middleweight. He actually cut quite a few. Yeah, he lost to Michelle Prazeres back in 2018, then went up to middleweight. Beat Trevor Smith, Trevin Giles, and Alessio Di Chirico. Lost to Omari Akhmedov. Herman's the most like Akhmedov of that bunch. And yeah, I got Herman, but I don't know. This fight could look really, really bizarre. Herman is the underdog at plus 170 to plus 190. And Cummins is a prohibitive favorite, in my opinion. Minus 215 to minus 250? You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Pierre Rodriguez versus Jillian Robertson. How to put this? Robinson is one-dimensional as all crap. When she was on The Ultimate Fighter, she had a talk with Justin Gaethje. I think it was her anyways. And Gaethje was talking about how she needed to diversify her game and become more than just a jiu-jitsu player. He said it really, really poorly. He said it in a way that like kind of dismissed jiu-jitsu. And people gave him shit for it at the time. But I thought his message was actually quite strong. That like Robertson, being someone that everyone knows exactly what you're going to do, is going to limit the fact that you are very good at it. She's very, very good at the shot takedown, into chain wrestling, into trying to take your back or choking you. She's actually very, very good at that. Very good. But it is absolutely known down to the technique what she's going to try to do in the fight. And she has bad striking, and she's not super athlete. Every time she's fought somebody at a reasonably high level of athleticism for the weight class, and I'm going to give you the names, she has lost. JJ Aldridge, not even a high level person, just like a decent counter wrestler. Miranda Maverick, Tyler Santos, Macy Barber, Myra Bueno Silva, and you can even go back to like Cynthia Calvillo and Hannah Goldie. Like that's going back a really long ways. That's 2016 by the time we get to those two fights. But it's been a recurring theme that like even the reasonable athletes she's beaten, Maria Agapova and Priscilla Cachoeira, those are more, and Poliana Botello, those are all processes of those three fighters being incredibly self-destructive in a way that Pierre Rodriguez isn't. Rodriguez is a decent athlete. She's a meat and potato striker. She has some range-keeping tactics. She has some cagecraft. She is hard to take down. She is hard to bully. She is hard to out-grapple, even. To get really any kind of dominance on, period. She's not fought anyone on the level of Jillian Robertson. This is her highest level opponent up until this day because her biggest win prior to now is Sam Hughes. But, you know, Sam Hughes and Kay Hansen, they're okay. Felicia Machado, she's okay. And, yeah, got the job done. I guess the only one thing I would say is this is, I believe, a flyweight fight. No, it's strawweight. Okay, so Robertson's coming down. That might work out for her in the long run, but I don't think it'll work out here. Because I do think she'll actually be legitimately strong at the weight class. But Rodriguez is strong. So I've got Pierre Rodriguez by decision. I don't see her finishing her. Robertson is super tough and constantly trying to make you grapple with her, which forces you to just not really take the opportunities to possibly finish her. And Rodriguez is the underdog at minus 110 to plus 110. Robertson minus 110 to minus 135. So I guess in a nutshell, I'm going with the underdog there. Lando Venata versus Daniel Zellhuber. Now, what stuns me about this fight, and don't get me wrong, I'm not dead on Zellhuber after his loss to Trey Ogden. He can take that as a learning experience and become better and get his volume up and start doing some things and not letting small moments define fights that he can't really produce. But I am surprised he is a minus 125 to minus 130 favorite here against Lando Venata, plus 100, plus 106. Lando is a guy who had an incredible debut in the UFC, of course, way, way back in the day against Tony Ferguson. And as time has gone on, he's not really replicated that. He'll have moments. He'll have incredibly shiny moments, but he doesn't really put a fight together. Problem is that I think being able to create a couple of moments is really all you need to do to beat Zellhuber because he lost to Trey Ogden. I hope Zellhuber has learned some lessons and is going to advance his skill set and become a better fighter, but I have no guarantee that's going to happen, and I'll have to see it before I believe it. Lando Venata by decision, I guess, because Zellhuber does seem reasonably durable. And I'm not sure I trust Venata to actually finish people. Lando Venata, like I said, the underdog. Bet on Venata. Bruno Brazil, the only debuting... Oh, 1-2. I keep forgetting Gaston Bolaños has not fought in the UFC. Anyways, Bruno Brazil versus Denise Gomez. Brazil, 4 inches taller, 3 inches longer. Nominally speaking, they're both kickboxers. I think Gomes has a better pedigree, a better level of achievement, technicality. I think she is maybe even the better striker, but she's small. I have no idea how she fought in flyweight for a number of years, but she got big brothered by Loma, or big sister, I guess in this case, by Loma Lukebumbe. And I don't know, she feels like she should be at athlete. Brazil is huge for the weight class and is dangerous. She's wild, but she's creative as well. She hits hard. She's fast. She's got good anti-clinch stuff. She'll beat you up in the clinch if she can't beat you up at range too. I have Brazil by decision because Gomes is super durable and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I do. I'm looking forward to seeing what this fight will be. It's the sort of interesting fight we've been kind of waiting for in the division between two raw prospects that could make jumps at any second and become way better. I just think Gomes is hard capped by her size. And Brazil is the minus 149 to minus 184 favorite. Gomes plus 129 to plus 142. Brings us to Gaston Bolaños versus Aaron Phillips. Phillips has been away for a long time. 3 years. Every time he's fought someone notable in his career, even to like a Matt Hobar level, he's lost. And I'm going to go with Bolaños because I can't pick a guy who's been away that long due to injury and whatever, and debating retirement maybe. I don't know. I don't remember why he went away, essentially. Has he had a bunch of canceled fights? I guess that's one thing I could look at. Yeah, he had a canceled bout against Adrian Yanez. He got hurt there. Cameron Else withdrew against him. Moutinho withdrew. Phillips got sick when he was supposed to fight Jonathan Martinez and then hasn't been booked since 2021. I can't love it. I really can't love it. Surprised he's on the roster still, honestly. Bolaños is an incredibly flawed fighter. He's flashy with like very little substance to him. Very, very little substance to him. But that should be enough here. I've never been impressed with what Phillips is putting together. There's no X factor. There's no wow factor. There's nothing that seems to even reliably really work. I'm legitimately stunned that he's in the UFC still. Like I said. Anyways, yeah, Bolaños by TKO. He is the favorite at minus 175 to minus 210. That's a little bit steep. And Phillips plus 150 to plus 162. It's just I can't trust either of these guys fight, frankly. Jocelyn Edwards versus Lucy Pudilova. Edwards has a 2.5-inch reach edge, and honestly, anytime she has a reach edge, I'm probably going to pick her. She's my least favorite kind of development in the sense that she's a pretty athletic fighter. Pretty powerful, reasonably creative, reasonably fast. Could be a really exciting, really high-end fighter, but really kind of just relies on being a ranged kicker and piling up the jab, low kick, body kick, thrust kick, stuff that she likes to do, and keep you at range. And I like Pudilova. She's scrappy. She's a brawler. She tries really hard. It's good to see her back in the UFC after a while away, doing things in Octagon, but she's been beaten by raw physicality a couple of times. It's, I guess, essentially kind of the Jillian Robertson problem of, with more diversity. But, like, I like what you're doing here, but I just think that, unfortunately, athletic cheatery can get the better of you, and Edwards has athletic cheatery. So I've got Edwards by decision. Edwards is the plus 110 to plus 125 favorite, so that's another bet, possibly. And Pudilova, minus 135 to minus 150. Got that one done pretty quickly. I will end it basically here. Check out the links down below to get into the Discord and to check out the social media, the gaming stuff, and all that fun. I think you'll enjoy it. And I will see you after the fights with the recap. So peace out. Enjoy your day.